this being fairly mobile, I've been ignoring the ability to just unload a full fire on someone during that sort of pre-fire phase. And it says you don't move or whatever. It doesn't restrict you from melee though. And what it does is it obviates the opponent's defensive fire, or at least if you can get rid of the defending units. So it looks like an extreme advantage to me to use that right now to try to blow back some of these Indians. So I'll do that. Indian fireback, necessarily at long range, not particularly effective here, but I took the shots because they don't mark off their shots, right? Got an incredibly lucky hit on this unit. This is the only damage they really did. I think they pinned somebody. Yeah, they pinned someone as well. They killed Major McCleave as well. So the points are now, at the 2-to-1 level, and that's a pretty big deal, actually. I mean, that was 6 victory points went into the Indian account there. Remember, they vastly outnumber the American forces, but they were operating at such a disadvantage point-wise before. We've just made a huge leap upward. We see, once again, and I mean, politically correct, Native Americans, First People, whatever, but time period Indians, it's hard for me also, especially in my era. We'd be better off to call them the Comanche and the Kiowa. Anyway, mainly Comanche are left, charging forward, trying to just overwhelm the U.S. forces at this point. I want to take this. Now, obviously the danger here is, we might rack up the casualty score, but I'm hoping just to hit them with enough force that I can pretty much break this. And I think that's what's intended. I'm going to be facing some artillery fire, but I try to stay a little bit away from the guns so they don't do much more than just push me around. And at the end of that assault, still holding the fort. That didn't get attacked with melee, but we crossed this creek here, just here. These guys got repulsed. Over here I didn't launch attacks. Over here I wiped out a unit. I basically managed to knock out the weakest of the units, but got a lot of trade-offs. Trade-offs aren't necessarily good because, while the U.S. has a big victory point lead right now, that the trade-offs actually reduce the victory percentage as long as we're getting 1-to-1s, because we're changing that dynamic. So right now this is at 15 and we're at 28, which has dropped below 2-to-1 to a 1.5-to-1. We get enough trade-offs, we'll get that victory conditions up there. But once this hits 14, the Indian victory, the points that the U.S. gets for killing the natives increases. And once it gets to 20, the natives start undergoing restrictions where they can't attack as much. So there are negatives to doing the trade-offs, is what I'm saying. But we are kind of outflanking this position. That looks scary to me. I'm not sure we can hold the fort. I've got to start thinking about things like setting fires. One thing that the native player may want to do is set a lot of fires early on with like little units or something, because that will deprive Carson's force of that defensive maneuver. You're only allowed to set a certain number of fires throughout the entire game, and that's for both players. This is always a shitty design decision to me, where, it's like, what's going on? Are the Indians using up Carson's flint? Or Is the fire that they're building over here somehow eating up the grass over here? What's going on? What's intended is to prevent either side from overusing that grass burning technique. But when one side can deprive the other who wants it more, it might be advantageous. On the other hand, maybe it's a waste of time to do that. I really kind of need all my forces to come plowing forward. And I guess that's about it. A lot of units pinned, which is not good. Gonna have trouble extricating this guy, though. That's the real problem. I'm worried I'm gonna lose him. So I think for the first time in the game, we have hit a rally phase that counts. The US has a couple of units that are pinned, and I believe I must check for them. I'm not positive, but I probably want to. So this one's no problem at all. Well, he's in rally range. And this one's even better off. He's stacked with a commander, so he gets a +1. So let's take a look at this one. It would be so technically this is actually a self-rally if you're not stacked, I think. I don't know. The way the rules are written, it's kind of weird, but they're kind of contradictory in certain places. But obviously, if you're within range, it doesn't count. It says ignore if in command radius of leader, just to make things really weird. Well, I call it self-rally. So we are not in any terrain that's impacted. And so we just roll a die. And a 4 is a success. We get to get rid of that pinned. Now on a 1, I think something bad happens, like we were out. And the other one's at +1, so it will not rout. And it's on a fort, which means that it's at a total of +2. So it also gets rid of its pinned marker. And that's pretty easy. Yeah. Where I see the rules are kind of contradictory, when I looked at self-rally, one thing it seemed to imply was that the Indians also need to have leaders. I don't think that's actually the case, but I'll have to look that up more carefully if it's in effect, because maybe they can't rally at all if, well, this isn't a rally, this is just a disruption. And that's going to put us to the beginning of the stuff we're used to. Here's the problem. I've got the enemy right up against me. If I withdraw, I undergo withdrawal fire. Not sure that's the case if I set a fire, because line of sight gets screwed up then. No, because I could fire into the fire. It would be blocking terrain, but like woods or whatever. At least that's what I'm going to interpret. I'm not going to go look that up. So I think I want to just stand here and fire. Although, geez, I mean, this guy might roll back a space or something. This looks really bad. Well, we'll see what we can do. Do we want to lie down? It makes us harder to hit, but it also makes it more difficult to hit the enemy. And I would like to rack up that casualty rate so that the Indians can't just overwhelm me. Doing pre-fire and not moving, I was able to pretty much make it so that the Indians almost had no firepower coming back. They were able to shoot into these two. I repulsed this unit with the artillery. Ran into the woods, great. Actually, it probably has to run 2 spaces. Okay. Because it's an initial route. The normal routes stop. I don't think the initials do. Anyway, and they have to move further away and all kind of stuff like that. Then I launched a melee attack. I didn't even fire this gun. For reason, there was nothing. All I'm likely to do is push units back, and I'm not really that intent on that right now. And then I did an assault here and got myself an extra hit on the Indians. They're getting closer and closer to that, hey, we're able to score even more. Right now, we're at 30 to 15, so we're back at that 2 to 1. And that'll put us, I think, on the Indian side of things. Not launch any grass fires again because of that withdrawal thing. Yeah, I sort of said that before, and now I realize, wait, I did talk about this. Yeah, where I'm in too close a contact to really be able to get out of there safely. Too many units would have gotten opportunity fire on them. It was much, much better to do my initial fire and not move, do full fires, and just, you know, try to pin and weaken the Indians as much as possible. The U.S. CAF fires back at this assault, and I mean, they do something. They pin a number of units, they do some casualties, but the biggest thing was off of a very lucky shot, taking Santana out. And that's, you know, 4 more points. So we've got a pretty heavy displacement of points here, differential in points here. And we're starting to get 2 points per Indian as well. Plus, we're getting closer and closer to that 20, which, you know, disrupts their capability to launch a massive attack. Because the Indian units are fairly small, all the units in this game are fairly small, right? I mean, you end up not getting very high on the chart, and in fact, you know, if you move, there goes half your firepower. If you're firing at long range, or you've got some kind of impact on you, like pinned or whatever, your firepower's halved. And right away, you know, that means a strength 3 or less unit is unable to fire if it's got like moved and has an effect on it. So we didn't get a lot of that fire going. Where we did get fire is over here. We pinned that thing, and we're gonna do a melee there. So I'm gonna play that out because that's kind of interesting. That's the most fired of the howitzers, and it is going to fire some canister. Now, all these units are going in. I could pivot. Well, let me check the melee chart, what that disrupted is going to do. That disrupted, that's a -1 to the die roll. I may not want that. Okay, so just these are going in. I'm going to fire at this one. I could pivot and fire, but that gives me a disadvantage. And then I could hit this one. It's maybe more attractive to shoot. But I would rather hit the one. So I'm going to send the 2 units in to avoid the penalty for disruption. And I think there's a low ammo penalty too. And they're just like die roll penalties. So you just do not want them. Although it may be half or more or something. I don't know. Let me look it up. Putting any of these disrupted or low ammo units is going to be a penalty. Low ammo doesn't affect the Indians because they have lots of, they can throw things and stuff. They wouldn't normally. Okay, so we take a look at the howitzer canister. I've already marked off a round. And we've got full crew. This goes on the melee column. We're pinned. That's going to give us a -1. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, pinned is a bonus for howitzer fire. It's not in the normal fire, is it? Oh yeah, it is. Oh, I haven't been being nice to the pinned units. I thought it might be, and I thought I looked, and well, ignored that. Okay, but it's pinned, so that means it can't even fire. Shit. Well, that sucks. They're hiding behind their guns. Oh well. Let me erase that fire. Like TSS now. Pin a unit and just stick it in place and it won't do anything. So yeah, we're able to just charge in. I can't retreat before melee with the guns. I could just give up the guns, but I got a chance of fighting successfully against this. So it's 7 strength points against 2. There's 2 men there. So that puts it at 3 to 1 on the Indian table. And we have the pinned, so it's 3 to 1 at +1. This is not going to go well. We probably should have tried to retreat. We get a 6, C2R2, we kill both the men, and we're going to destroy those guns. Picked up some serious victory points there. Not only did we take out that cannon, but we also took this space. I didn't attack anywhere else. I'm kind of outnumbered in these areas, so doesn't seem prudent. But we're collecting up some serious victory points now at 24 to 37. Not enough yet, and I just don't have the strength to go into here. So, yeah. And those low ammos are beginning to collect up. Oops. It's painful. It's painful. All right. The current situation, I feel like good old Kit Carson's got himself in a bundle of trouble, and I don't see a way out except shooting my way out. So that's what I'm gonna do. I don't get a hell of a lot of traction. I mean, I push him back a little bit in places, but not enough to really do the job. And even though we're filled with beer, we will fail to make a terrible joke. All right, so the Indians keep it coming, and trying to just surround Carson's forces. We got the Adobe Walls itself surrounded, but over here we've got the main force really under threat. But we are running low in force. Is what feels like overwhelming power just melts away so easily when the defender gets to fire full strength coming back at you. We did a couple of hits. We got the Indian casualties up to 19 now, but I think another cannon's going to go. We'll see. A couple things went very well for the U.S. forces. We pushed everything back. Yeah, we took some casualties, but we're collecting up better victory points because we got the Indian casualty level high enough. So now we're at 49 to 25, just about that 2 to 1 level, right? And on top of that, we managed to drive a bunch of their forces away. Now that high value there, we're above 20 on the Indian losses, which I have to find. Jeez, I don't know where to find it. Yeah, I'm bad at this stuff. Oh, Indian casualty limits, there they are. Okay, so it's reached 20. I can no longer initiate melee combat unless I'm within 5 of an unburned Indian camp, which is really out here. You're not going to be able to reach that. Or if there's a leader. Now, I just had my leader hit with a severe wound. He's probably going to be converted into a casualty. Well, maybe not. Maybe not, because this may be the opportunity to get away. I got enough victory points to be getting a major victory here. I'm probably not going to be able to get 3 to 1 victory. So if I just kind of pull away, it's going to be damn hard for the Indians to do much. They have no leaders left, and melee is their better option, and they're too beat up to really do it. So I think this is actually probably pretty much over. We'll play out a couple more turns, but I don't think we're going to play out the whole battle, the whole time span, simply because I don't see the Indians pursuing. They're too beat up. They really are. I don't know. Maybe if I can hit something like a cannon or something that's trying to escape. But other than that, it's going to be pretty damn hard to get my way out of here. We'll see. I don't see a very easy way out of the Adobe Fort itself. I got zones all around me. I'd be triggering opportunity fire all over the place. I might be able to shift down a little bit and push my way so that I can kind of break things up. Honestly, I think the U.S. is in good enough shape that they can afford to beat the Indians back. I think I've kind of screwed up with the Indians, and especially I got another 4 points sitting here just to take. I don't think I can do much with these. I could scare them off, but that doesn't do much. Well, the Union wasn't able to do a whole hell of a lot. Now we've surrounded the Adobe Walls fort, and we're just going to blast the living shit out of it as much as we can, try to take it back. We can't assault it, but we can sure fire a lot. And moving units back that have low ammo to try to recover them. And then also shifting around to attack the routed units. So we'll see how that works out. A weird position. I mean, the Indians surround this. They should have massive force on it. But that's a good defensive position and unable to cause anything except a morale check. And the position does not give a morale check bonus, which I'm surprised about. Light Woods gives a bonus, not the Adobe Walls. But the leader's there and whatever. And kind of the only thing the U.S. Cav can do is try to use the artillery to bust a route open for those guys, and that's not easy either. I don't have a lot of ammo left. This is my section 2, which has more of the high explosive ammo. The other guy got wiped out, of course. But on the other hand, you know, neither side's really able to affect the other. They're just plinking and doing nothing. Hey, the New Mexico Cav still in the walls, trying to shoot their way out, trying to, you know, Carson's trying to help get them out, but to no real avail. And we're almost out of ammo. This guy's got a half a shot left, and it's looking pretty bad. I may just have to run for it and take my licks, which maybe I should have done earlier, right? That's going to put us over on the Indians. Complicated enough, I'm doing a lot of pre-fire now. The Union's not firing when they're, or the U.S. is not firing when they're disrupted. Just, you know, I can't afford it. I got a half shot left, you know. Yeah, it's looking harder and harder to fight my way out, and I don't know. The Indians aren't willing to attack because they don't have a leader and they're not close enough to their camps or anything. So they're just, you know, shooting arrows and what gunfire they have, and funneling units back and forth to recover their ammo. This is going to be a long, long siege if nobody can hit anyone, because it's really hard to hit these units. Might just walk away. They count as low ammo, which means they're going to cost points anyway if they're on the map still. So that's kind of problematic. I gotta look at that and figure out if I just want to abandon them. But abandoning them might mean losing my edge. So right now I'm at 55 to 25. I've got that 2-to-1 edge. If I abandon them, I probably won't have that anymore. Anyway, I gotta remove those fire markers, and otherwise we're almost at noon. They improved their defensive position. I'm probably going to drop them into prone. The problem with that, of course, is that I don't get my shot anyway. I don't know. There's not really a good answer for this in terms of fighting my way out. I will not be able to. I will not be shooting on my next turn. But if I'm prone, I may just not want to shoot. So I may want to hold off on that. I put that there, though, to remind me about the opportunity. Otherwise, it's really kind of up to Carson to try to blast his way through, and I don't know if he has enough oomph. The firing continues with nothing too exciting happening, to tell you the truth. They caused a couple of casualties, at least one to the Indians. I don't think they caused any on their return fire. Pulled the artillery back a little bit, but for the most part, just did first fires everywhere, which doesn't really resolve like this. Our key problem, which is how to get out of here. Oh, we did lose one. We lost a horse holder and all of its horses. And that is actually an issue, except I might end up losing something like that, which would also lose me horses. Yeah, or that would lose me a unit that I need to have covered. All right, on to the Indians. The U.S. continues to rack up points. I missed. I only gave 1 point to them for one of the Indians they killed last firing round. Oh, this should have moved. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just put it there. This guy did not. He reloaded. But yeah, we're at like 59 to 26. So we're gaining in victory points, but we are nearly out of ammo. And that's not so hot. And there's a lot left before we can leave the map, assuming we can get away at all. The Indians did a lot of first fire, but it doesn't do much. Oh well. At least it's cooling down. It feels almost like a normal night now. Well, I'm downstairs where it's chillier, but I was outside. It felt chilly. My house is still baking hot, but at least it doesn't smell like a tinderbox ready to burst into flame, which it did yesterday. Push out another turn. With the Union so far down in their ammo, I decided to pull out. And I lost a strength point in doing so. And I'm also abandoning whatever's here, pretty much. We're continuing the attempt to disengage. The Indians are continuing to follow. I can't really get away easily. Disengaging is hard. And it should be, right? Unless you have something to throw in the line to cover for it. Pulling back, the enemy should be able to pretty much keep contact. And this game seems to show that pretty well. The advantage, though, is, well, so it's a mixed thing. It's a mixed bag. Because, first of all, I'm getting further away from the ammo. So, getting away from the Indian camps is of some value. But the other side of it is the Indian units can charge forward and kind of keep pace with me. And when they come up and attack, they're attacking at half strength. This is better than just standing there against each other, pretty much. But when I withdraw, they get full strength. But the difference is, they come up and attack, I get a full strength fire, but I'm, I got a half shot on each of these. One of them is gone. A full shot on each of these, and then the howitzer, which drove a unit away, but that doesn't do a hell of a lot. The one advantage I have is I have my horses so I can go mobile. The Indians are going to have a harder time fighting mounted, but they get a bonus shooting at me if I'm mounted. So everything's kind of this weird trade-off thing, and it's quite possible that I could just end up staying there the whole game for whatever that's worth. Yeah, it's really hard to crack that nut, but it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to leave the other stuff on the line. If they devote everything here, I could maybe swing around or something and threaten the camp and force them, to pay some attention to me. So, I don't know. There's a lot of game left until I can disengage. And even then, there's still this. So it's like, well, do I just leave them there? I don't know. Figure out what to do with the U.S. here. I did some initial fire half strength with this guy, just to allow me to move. And I may do the same with this guy. But I'm considering the artillery at this point. Yeah, that half strength. I mean, we're just about out of bullets. I feel like we just have to run. But that we just have to run is kind of iffy because the artillery still has a significant number of shells left in it. This is section 2. I got 4 shots. Plus I got canister if I get charged. I could just pack up and leave. I'm not terribly fast. Not terribly slow, but I'm slower than the Cav. And that's going to put a weight around my units that are withdrawing, no matter what. On the other hand, the game kind of allows, as far as I can tell, for a retire by prolong type situation, without any special rules for it. Which is that, yeah, you can do fire, and it's not half fire. Half fire is not allowed for the artillery. Now this is where it gets tricky. It's not, because it's not clearly spelled out and you can't half fire, does that mean you can't move? Well, you can't limber up and move, but you might be able to manhandle. Since that fits kind of the retire by prolong idea pretty well, I feel like it should be allowed. So maybe I'm going to make it happen. But even allowing that, not really putting a lot of space between me and the enemy in doing that. So, plus these are howitzers. I'm not sure howitzers can actually retire by prolong. Problem is, it's going to cost me 3 movement points to limber this thing because I only have a half crew there. Ugh, God, this is painful. Moving further in, the U.S. tried to pull back a little bit, limbered up the guns. I don't remember if I talked about that. But then the Indians actually swept around, were set up to fire at the guns. They still can't melee them, but they got driven back. These things basically don't have normal ammo rules, so they can run low, but whatever. And that unit got driven back, but you can see I'm also sweeping around behind over here. But had a lot of low ammos on me, having a hard time making it out there. I don't know how much longer I can put pressure on there and still keep this from escaping. As it stands, as soon as they're unpinned, they can get out. And that may be their best move. On the other hand, they're damn near invulnerable. I mean, it's really hard, especially as the Indian units drop down. There's one unit that's got a 5 strength. That would get me on the F table at -3. I would have to roll a 12 to hit him. And the same is true, basically, if I'm looking at any strength between 2 through 4. Less than that can't hurt him. But we keep ending up pinning them. They're not rallying during their turn. And that's prevented them from getting out. If they do try to escape, that may be difficult. The fact that they haven't been able to escape is why we're falling back and kind of abandoning them, though. And then we got to come to the choice. You know, how many shots with a 3 or higher Indian force are there going to be into that thing? Well, right now it's 3 shots per, well, this one dropped, or is low. Right now it's 2 shots per round, but I can easily get that to say 3 shots per round. That should mean in the course of 12 turns, I'm going to get a hit. Just one. 1 in 36. I'm probably not going to wipe that whole force out in the course of like the battle, but it's a hard call. Do you want to run away or not? I did kill another Indian. Got my points for that. I hope it was 2. And that's it. Person pulling away on his side of the 1240 turn, but took a couple of casualties from that. And where are we at? 30 to 61. We're right at that 2-to-1 level again. It's going to be really hard to get it to a point where the Indians can win. But yeah, it's rough. The Indians continue both their fruitless pursuit. It wasn't during the Union or the U.S. turn, they pulled away and took a couple casualties. That may happen again, but here you can see we lost some ammo on this. This unit got disrupted. It's going to be harder to hurt them. And then here we did some first fire and didn't really get any results. And continuing to shuttle units back, load up again and try to keep going. Eventually, something's going to change, but it is pretty dull right now. Got a chance to make a dash out of the fort, and every last man except the leader's dead. And the leader's basically captured because of that. Not a good situation at all. But we're still close to that 2-to-1 range, and I think it's pretty hard for the Indians to do better. But again, the designer makes it clear the Indians are tricky, and I may not have the clever little clue that makes them easier to play. If there is like a single little, hey, here's a trick that makes them work and makes them more effective, I consider leaving that out of the game, not giving that hint of how to do it, to be basically a means of making the game less historically accurate if they're supposed to, It does, unlike the modern Euro theory, which is, the whole goal is to figure out how to play the game reasonably well. My feeling is with war games, the goal is to provide players with the mechanisms that will allow them to play a historically accurate scenario. Now, I don't know enough about this to say, should the Indians have a trickier time? What I've heard from someone else about Little Bighorn is they found the Indians almost impossible, and that the U.S. firepower was just too great. Anyway, this doesn't feel like a great victory to me. I'm losing units left and right, but the victory point balance is such that it just doesn't matter. And that's what I don't see. I feel like I've killed a whole lot of U.S. troops. Now, yes, a fair number of Indians have died as well. You can look and see the casualty, though. 24 Indians have died. There's 34 Indian victory points. Get rid of the artillery that I took out. That was a 5-point unit. And the Indians are doing slightly better in terms of casualties. To me, well, okay, no. We have to get rid of, 6, 7 points that were gained over here as well. And then, actually, those aren't added in. Yeah, to me, there's too many bonus victory points for the U.S. is really the issue. Now, their goal is probably more to wipe out the villages and everything. That may not be the case for the commander, but for the war, the Indian Wars as a whole, yeah. That's what won it, was, taking it out on the civilian populations, making it so that they had no place to live and forcing them onto the reservations. But I just don't know. Anyway, I think we're on to the Indian turn. Now, as we make it to the 120 turn, still shuffling forces back and forth. They run out of ammo, they run back to the camps, they grab something. But continuing the press, and not only did we kill the leader, the major or whatever back here, but we also killed a strength point here. That gets us to a total of 40 victory points up against 61. We're not going to see that 2-to-1 The question is, are we going to get to the 1.5 to 1? That's becoming the iffy thing. Or does this just end up as a draw? It doesn't feel like a draw to me. It feels like the Indians are kicking ass. But again, I mean, I'm just talking about, wow, they're really, but they took a lot of losses. There are a lot of Indian hits out there. They went over that limit where they can't melee anymore. Maybe I was too aggressive, whatever. But I had to break that line. I had to eat up the ammo of the U.S. forces. That's the one real limiting factor to the U.S. They could have just sat there all day with the normal ammo factors, or with maybe the wagon train, the pack train or whatever. It would be almost impossible, I think, for the Indians to do very well. Although there are more targets for them to hit with the pack train there. So I don't know. It remains to manages to pull back the rest of their troops, making the river crossing roll. It's not that big a deal. I used the ford, and basically a 1 or a 2 would have gotten me into a mired position with a possibility of a wreck on a 1. But leaving this hex, I ended up losing the last strength point that was there. So there's really almost nothing left. I've got half a crew hauling the artillery, and I got 4 strength points of cav. If this ends up anything better than like a draw, I got a problem. And where are my points? 61 to 41. It's right on the border between a draw and a minor victory. We wipe out the rest of the U.S. forces, and it's not that it definitely drops it down to a draw, but to me that would feel like a disaster for the U.S., right? I mean, if nothing escapes, and sure, I killed off a fair number of the Indian units. Now, maybe I'm thinking in terms of like things like the Zulu Wars and stuff, but man, the casualty rates should not be close to 1 to 1, and you consider that like anything except a massive defeat by the more modern army. Anyway, let's go over to the Indians. Pressure continues, still doing the shuttling. Going to push forward, getting closer and closer to the edge, closer and closer to the timeline where I can leave, and I'm kind of running out of space. It doesn't make much difference, but only 2 units came up against me, and I used my last bullet to scare one of them away, and now it's a matter of like, yeah, I'll unlimber my guns and try to defend the hole here. It's at least decent terrain in terms of like they're not going to be able to get me easily from here, and I can go off map there. But I could be wiped out, and it's not like I'm going to get to use canister because they can't melee me. So all I've got is, I guess, 4 rounds of high explosive that I'll use to try to scatter them as they come closer. None of it probably matters. It really looks to me like I've got 60 to 42, 61 to 42, right? So to get to that 1.5, I would have to be just a little bit higher than I am. And that's not likely to happen when I have no bullets left. And the Indians are not going to get enough points off of what's here. So this is 5, Carson's 10 if I kill him, but I think he can run away without a problem. Seems a little weird. And 4 more, so that's 14, 19, call it 20 points because there's gun crew there. 20 more points would get me up to 62. That would get me the other side of the draw if I wipe everybody out. Wiping out every single U.S. soldier. And, I don't feel like I was that badly hammered in terms of the native forces. Yes, I lost 26. But I just don't see how the Indians can possibly win the way the victory points are set up. It feels to me like double the losses for units for the U.S. and you get a more reasonable victory point situation here. I don't know if I'm even going to play it out. I guess I will, but because I'm almost at the end, right? But it just feels like such a waste. The push gets a little closer, and one more Indian casualty actually occurred, which I don't know how much that changes the world. I only gave them 1 point for it. They were supposed to get 2. That's getting close to that 1.5 to 1 barrier. Again, I feel like this is what would happen, and I really don't feel like the victory points mean much. They're too skewed. I'm walking away with this with the feeling that the Indians had a massive victory, and we're talking about the difference between the line between a U.S. minor victory and a draw, and that's just not what I'm seeing feels like. And the final cluster here gives us a last chance to shoot up some more U.S. forces. More Indians have died in the coming in. Right now we're very clearly in that 1.5 to 1 victory point situation. And that is the end of that. During the U.S. turn, they pulled their units off the map. A little bit of pre-fire forced some things back, but no additional casualties on either side. And we're at, if we look at the points, 65 to 43. Half of 43 is 21 and a half. That puts it to 64 and a half. This is about as close as you can get to that line. But it ends up as a U.S. minor victory. I don't feel like the U.S. did well at all. I feel like they got their asses handed to them. I don't feel like I had a whole hell of a lot that I could do to help myself out of that situation, but I'm a dumb person, right? Supposedly the Indians are harder to play. Well, maybe, because I ended up, playing kind of naively. I feel like the U.S. Cav really got demolished there, yet the victory point standing is not in accordance with that. They walked away with a minor victory. What was missing? The thing I was hoping to see here was something more like what mounted firearm combat has as its advantage. Think about the situation that like the Mongols had, right? You kind of think that that's more or less what these Indian wars would be like. But here's the problem. By this point, the rifle, especially the ones the U.S. Army are carrying, are so accurate and so fast firing. Yeah, I mean, nothing compared to modern, but the carbines that they're armed with are so effective that dismounted infantry was very effective. That's why you see, in Custer's Last Stand, they're not charging in with horses firing, the whole way. The horses are primarily a mobility element. So you're not going to see that kind of swirling fight. And we saw the elements that we expected, the U.S. is able to give out pretty well, but when they run out of ammo, they're in trouble. I don't know how much more clever I could be with the Indians. Maybe somebody can point something out. From what I've heard from other people, Little Bighorn is, the U.S. guns are too good. One question that I have there is, Are they using the advanced ammo depletion or the basic game ammo depletion? I see a big difference between those. The US would be in a lot better shape if all my units were low ammo and not out of ammo and cannot fire anymore. You know, those low ammo units, hell, they still pack a punch, right? That gives you a half strength firing capability, and that's really one of the advantages that the Indian units have. Another factor, though, with that low ammo stuff, it doesn't track well on everything. First of all, they didn't put the scouts on there. The scouts are supposed to be on there. You could easily add them in. But here's another thing that's not on there. The horse holder units, the command flag, these things, the artillery unit, these things should all have tracked ammo, and if you don't have them, they start acquiring some sort of weird situation. Do you handle them as if they're normal basic units? Do you integrate them into the firepower rules? I don't know. But certainly with the basic firepower rules, the US would be able to continue holding this fort. They would not have been dislodged. I wouldn't have given up the ground that I did. Of course, that might have been to the Indians' advantage because the withdrawal, you know, it definitely cost me quite a few units. I had to basically surrender what was at the fort, but I did, you know, manage to save a few strength points. Yeah, I don't know. Something feels wrong here. And on top of that, it's a very clunky system. And that's an issue, you know. That's simply a matter of taste for me. But as you get lower and lower in the scale, you're no longer really dealing with what feel like big formations. Here you're talking about 10 men per strength point. You know, you're not talking about those kind of big formations that really define, you know, the field at a Civil War battle. You might have a little cluster of people like we did here trying to make a stand and then deciding, well, let's abandon our buddy. He's doomed anyway. We don't want to die with him. But it does provide you some interesting situations. First of all, the victory points drive you to do certain things that are cool. So like driving you to attack, burn those initial fields, gives you an immediate question. Hey, do you want to let the Indians go back and report back and, you know, activate? Or do you want to burn those tents? And if you have a chance to wipe them out, you do it because you get an ultimate victory. You get like an infinite victory. In terms of, you might not have taken a single casualty. You probably haven't if you manage to wipe out the Indians who are defending, you know, along the Carson Creek here, which probably wasn't named that yet. But if they get away, then you have this thing where, yeah, you want to at least grab the Adobe fort. That's worth 5 points. That's a lot of victory points. But that puts you in range once the warning gets back of an attack. The attack slowly develops. It starts fighting around there. Eventually, the US is running low on ammo. They want to get out. I probably delayed too long in getting out. I probably could have gotten a better victory situation if I had pulled out a lot earlier. A lot earlier. Once I got those 5 victory points, there was no reason for me to keep fighting, except this is the best defensive place on the board. But that's kind of a false premise, because the reality is all that reload capability is really important to the Indians, and if you can stretch them far from that, you can cut down. You can either cut down on, well, you're going to cut down on their firepower. The question is, are they going to go back and reload each time that they run out of ammo, or are they going to stay there with reduced firepower forever? And I don't know, you know, how to optimize that. I was pushing units back on the pursuit, and I'm not sure that was wise. As you can see, there's a fair number of guys who could have been up there pursuing and pressing the attack. The problem, of course, there is unit density aids the fire. So if you're firing into a dense a group of a lot of units, you might get some advantages, but that's not going to matter once the U.S. is out of ammo. Anyway, I'll come back with a review or something. Not too convinced that I'm going to keep going in the system. It just, it's like squad leader, right? You get to too little a situation, and it just doesn't excite me the same way that I'd want it to.